It was a couple of months ago when David and I volunteered to do music for today's service in Gretchen's absence. So it was a couple of months ago that we chose the theme for our music today, which is Memorial Day. So if you were here in the service a couple of weeks ago, you would have heard this same tune played by Gretchen's children on violin and cello. So now you're going to get to hear the mandolin and guitar version of Ashokan Farewell.
We light our chalice with this hope. As swimmers, dare to lie face to the sky, and water bears them. As hawks rest upon air, and air sustains them, so would we learn to attain freefall and float into Creator Spirit's deep embrace, knowing no effort earns that all-surrounding grace.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom. Circle round for peace. For all of us imprisoned. Circle for release. Circle for the planet. Circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole.
Hello, everyone. Lovely to see you this morning and lovely to be here in York, Pennsylvania, my mom's hometown. She got so excited when I told her I was preaching here. She said, "I was born in the hospital just down the road from there." And I told her, "That's great. I'm not going there today, but good to know." I have a sort of story, but more importantly, a project for you this morning. But I want to start by referring back to that brief piece of music we heard this morning, the very jazzy version of Raindrops on Roses, my favorite things from the musical. Did it sound familiar? Could you kind of catch that tune? Da, 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 da. Okay, so you heard that part. And then something else happened with it, right? So that's jazz for you. This was a version done by the jazz giant John Coltrane. The thing is, before he was a jazz giant, he was a little boy. He was a little boy living his life and listening and observing. And then as he got more and more proficient with music, he started incorporating those things he had experienced and heard into his music. So if you listen carefully, you can hear the sound of cars in the city, of people weeping or people laughing. So think for a moment about a sound you heard this morning, and what kind of music would you start with there? What sound? I often think of laughter as a bit of music because it goes up and then it comes down, or it goes really, really, really fast if you have that kind of laugh. So that's a part. Weeping does the same thing. A cry of some sort will have a yes and an up and down, and a quiet and a loud. So my project for you this morning to work on throughout the service, very quietly please, no extemporaneous jazz for this, is to fill this blank canvas. Maybe with an image, or at least your interpretation of an image that you saw this morning, or an interpretation of a feeling you're having right now. Mine is this incredible impulse to make it not blank anymore. I have been carrying this around for 2 weeks. That's so hard. I want to put a swish of color on it somehow. So we have some art materials up here. There's some oil pastels. There's some glue and little bits of paper. There's some ribbon. Add to it and make it yours for this morning. Let it represent this morning. Let it be our jazz improvisation interpreted in art for what is going on with you. Let this be your what if you are an artist. What if you are a musician? What if you are a writer? And you just haven't thought of yourself that way yet. Here's your chance. Okay? Now, if you'll pardon me for just a few seconds, I'm going to put something on that canvas before I burst. Okay. Let's see. How about some purple? Don't watch. Oh, I feel better now. All right. Please do come forward as you feel called and add to our co-created piece of art. Thank you.
Feel the deep
you. And I do invite you, as you feel called from whatever you hear, whatever may be stirring your heart, to please add to our co-created artwork this morning. I found our reading on a blog called The Marginalian. The author and collector of things, Maria Popova, puts this out each week. And this is a fairly recent post of hers that just seemed to fit today. She writes, in her 1996 Nobel Prize for Literature acceptance speech, poet Wisława Szymborska noted that the question of why artists are so reluctant to answer questions about what inspiration is and where it comes from also rattled her, the Nobel Prize winner. She offered her, I love this word, wieldiest answer. Inspiration is not the inclusive privilege of poets or artists generally. There is, has been, and will always be a certain group of people whom inspiration visits. It's made up of all those who've consciously chosen their calling and do their job with love and imagination. Their work becomes one continuous adventure as long as they manage to keep discovering new challenges in it. Whatever inspiration is, it's born from a continuous, I don't know. And a sentiment of chilling prescience today, as we witness tyrants drunk on certainty drain the world of its essential inspiration. Szymborska considered the destructive counterpoint to this generative not knowing. Szymborska wrote, all sorts of torturers, dictators, fanatics, and demagogues struggling for power by way of a few loudly shouted slogans also enjoy their jobs. And they too perform their duties with inventive fervor. Well, yes, but they know. They know, and whatever they know is enough for them once and for all. They don't want to find out anything about anything else, since that might diminish their argument's force. This is why I value that little phrase, I don't know, so highly. It's small, but it flies on mighty wings. It expands our lives to include the spaces within us, as well as those outer expanses in which our tiny earth hangs suspended. Szymborska's poem, Utopia, written 20 years before her Nobel Prize speech, describes a place of certainty and its inhabitants. It goes like this. Utopia, island where all becomes clear, solid ground beneath your feet. The only roads are those that offer access. Bushes bend between the weight of proofs. The tree of valid supposition grows here, with branches disentangled since time immemorial. The tree of understanding, dazzlingly straight and simple, sprouts by the spring called Now I Get It. The thicker the woods, the vaster the vista, the valley of obviously. If any doubts arise, the wind dispels them instantly. Echoes stir unsummoned and eagerly explain all the secrets of the worlds. On the right, a cave where meaning lies. On the left, the lake of deep conviction. Truth breaks from the bottom and bobs to the surface. Unshakable confidence towers over the valley. Its peak offers an excellent view of the essence of things. For all its charms, the island is uninhabited, and the faint footprints scattered on its beaches turn without exception to the sea, as if all you can do here is leave and plunge never to return into the depths, into unfathomable life. Thus ends the reading. Why is currently my own favorite question. Why? I ask it when I listen to the news or read about another mass shooting, when I talk to myself in that voice that doesn't think I'm enough. Why? When I check my own assumptions. This comes out of years of answering my now adult sons, why and how come and how does that work? Have you ever really answered all the questions a 4-year-old will ask as long as you keep answering? I went for an hour once, just kept answering. There is curiosity and needed skills to learn, and the human thirst for certainty in the midst of an increasingly uncertain world. There's the uncertainty of a blank page. That's kind of how this sermon began, because I needed to write a description of what I would be speaking about at least a month ahead of time, and I hadn't really thought about it, and there I was with a blank page in front of me. And all I came up with is, I don't know. And I thought, oh, I don't know. Okay, we'll start with that. So there's the blank page, that blank slate of your entire life coming before you as you've graduated or not graduated or moved on or do something like that. You've made that big plunge. There's the uncertainty of a practice. Like, am I going to get better at this? Or am I just going to keep going? I don't know. There's the uncertainty of creating policy, whether it's in a congregation or on a larger scale around our country. How is this really going to work? Are we leaving somebody out? And there's the uncertainty of justice work, of letting yourself step back if you're not part of that community and letting somebody else lead and letting somebody else know more than you. The thing is, with uncertainty and the discomfort we might feel about it, is that it's not just you, it's how the human brain is wired. Does that make you feel better? Your human brain is wired to move toward certainty, the known. Neuroscientist Bo Lotto said, we do almost anything to avoid uncertainty. And yet the irony is that uncertainty is the only place we can go if we're ever going to see differently. And that's why creativity always begins the same way. It begins with a question. It begins with not knowing. It begins with a why. It begins with a what if? So a deep question is, how is it possible to ever see differently as if everything you see is a reflex grounded in your history of assumptions? Assumptions that the ground beneath your feet is going to be where it was the second before you took the step. Assumptions that someone who looks like you will think like you. Assumptions that your way is the only way. Have you ever done? Yeah, I've done that. My way is the only way. Our brain evolved to take what was meaningless and give it meaning. So the sound you hear in the middle of the night becomes something. The color that just flashed by as you were going along the road is no longer just a color, it becomes something because of all these experiences and the assumptions you place on those experiences. That's not bad. It's how you're wired, how we're wired, but it's something to be aware of, to ask why of, or where did that come from? I had to do that a lot in the chaplain residency, visiting with someone, and suddenly there's a thing that's making me anxious and making my heart go faster and making my palms sweat, and it's not me, except that it is. So how and where did that come from? And can I step back and let it go for right now so I can be fully present for this person? So how do we see differently? How do we rewire our brain? Can we do that? How can we get past those assumptions and that fear of the uncertainty? Lotto says again, it's by engaging the process of creating perception, so creating new perception. The first step is to admit that everything you do right now is embodied in your assumptions, not just sometimes, but all the time. We're wired that way because if we weren't wired that way, we wouldn't have survived. Assuming that that big sound of something rumbling in the forest that we can't quite see yet is dangerous meant that we got out of the way. We learned to get out of the way rather than waiting to see when then it was too late. So that's deeply embedded in you. So it's work to rewire that. Nothing interesting begins with knowing. It begins with not knowing. I wanted to start with a tool here because it is work to do that. It's doing that anti-racism work. It's doing the justice work that says, I don't know everything and I can learn and somebody else knows how and can tell me. So I want to bring in a spiritual practice that could help you take down some of the assumptions. And it's as simple as reading, like reading is simple. Reading is not simple. This is called Lectio Divina. Some of you may have done this before or heard of this before, but it's taking maybe a short passage. I'm going to use just a sentence here and reading it with different lenses, a different focus, so you hear it differently. This is a great way to tackle a text that you're finding difficult. Take one piece and really look at it. So this will be a quiet contemplation here. But if it inspires you to put something else on our canvas, please do. The phrase I would like to use is one of our beloved reading. It's called "Cherish your doubts, for doubt is the attendant of truth." That's from the Reverend Robert Weston. So I'm going to read it twice in our first round here. And for this first reading, listen for a word or the phrase within this very short passage that attracts you. What does your ear catch on? And then we'll take a moment of silence and think about that, repeat that to yourself. All right. Cherish your doubts, for doubt is the attendant of truth. Cherish your doubts, for doubt is the attendant of truth. For the second reading, ask, how is my life touched by this phrase? So listen to discover how your life might be touched by this passage. Consider possibilities. Receive a sensory impression. Cherish your doubts, for doubt is the attendant of truth. For the third reading, as you hear the phrase or the sentence again, ask, is there an invitation here for you? Is there an invitation for you here? Cherish your doubts, for doubt is the attendant of truth. So hearing this phrase, which may be familiar to you from many readings of it, did anything new come up for you? Focusing on this little phrase, this little sentence, in this way. Was there an invitation for you to do something differently? Be something different in this moment? So I would invite you in the week to come, or maybe over the summer, as you are reading, pause for just a moment and do this little practice of asking questions of your text in that way. And it doesn't have to be the whole thing all at once. It's a nice, small piece. Only a little uncertainty. I use this practice a lot in the reading I do around theology and around justice work, so that I can think through my assumptions, dig through that mass of stuff that may be getting in the way of really understanding and really embodying something. I ask myself then, am I living this peace? Am I living this justice work? Am I living into it? Am I living into Unitarian Universalism in a way that someone looking at my life could say, oh yeah, she was a UU? Because everybody will know that. We're so obvious. Am I out in the world doing justice humbly and listening and with my whole heart? And I ask why? Why might I want to examine my faith and how I live it as an individual and how we live collectively as a faith community? This comes up a lot when we talk about, I do a lot of guest preaching. So I come into places and I work within the liturgy that's there already. And I've had conversations with people about why that thing is the way it is. Why is it you read this thing, every time? And sometimes when I ask that, people look at it like, I don't know. I don't really know when we started doing that. And I'm not sure why. And that's okay. It may be perfectly wonderful, and it may embody just how you are as a community. But unless you ask that, of something that has been handed down to you, you won't know. I'm causing trouble for Reverend Jen. I'll end with this blessing for you to take with you as you cherish your doubts out in the world and embody the sacred I don't know out in the world. May you dig deep in your own assumptions and find treasure underneath. May you find your way through the no way just by trying and asking questions. May your I don't know ring through the world and to the rafters as a blessing for all who hear it. Amen and blessed be.
We shall meet, but we shall miss him. There will be one vacant chair. We shall linger to caress him while we breathe our evening prayer. When a year ago we gathered, joy was in his mild blue eye, but a golden cord is severed, and our hopes in ruin lie. We shall meet, but we shall miss him. There will be one vacant chair. We shall linger to caress him while we breathe our evening prayer. At our fireside, sad and lonely, often will the bosom swell at remembrance of the story, how our noble Willie fell, how he strove to bear our banner through the thickest of the fight, and uphold our country's honor in the strength of manhood's night. We shall meet, but we shall miss him. There will be one vacant chair. We shall linger to caress him while we breathe our evening prayer. True, they tell us wreaths of glory evermore will deck his brow, but this soothes the anguish only, sweeping o'er our heartstrings now. Sleep today, O early fallen, in thy green and narrow bed. Dirges from the pine and cypress mingle with the tears we shed. We shall meet, but we shall miss him. And there will be one vacant chair. We shall
Thank you. It's time now for extinguishing the chalice. Well, if you will join with me and say the words on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment, the ease we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Is this ending to be an ending, or merely prelude to new, more glorious beginnings? I pose the question, in your hearts lies the answer. We remember this weekend those who have served this country. There are so many, so many. We give thanks for them and what they did. We have hope that they find healing as they come home. And we promise, I will promise, to seek ways so that no one has to do that anymore. In your hearts lies the answer, even if it's, I don't know. Amen.
This last song is a medley of two songs. One of them David wrote when you were how old?
It was about 30 years ago.
A while. It was a while. Called Song of the Open Road, that is named after a Walt Whitman poem. And the second one is a traditional fiddle tune, which you can play fiddle tunes without fiddles. We do it all the time, called Liberty.